a meeting at the Vatican, somebody brought up, we need to discuss this. This is a serious issue. I didn't know what he was talking about. It's a serious issue. Die Frieden Gurisch. Nicht am Wort, nicht am Buch. Es ist actually, you're Gurisch. But in the course of the few months that have passed by, I was challenged by it. Things were sent to me, and then a fellow said to me, it's AI. And the question is, what use do we make of new technology? The Rebbe had geholfen that we need to harness technology in order to be able to be Evdei Hashem. And especially those who need to communicate both in writing and orally. Those who haven't had a lot of background in speech making and so forth. I think it's absolutely essential. But what are the limits? So what do we do? Where do we find somebody who knows about the PTA? And what the Rebbe führt vor der Welt. I asked one question, another question, and three fingers pointed in the same direction. Unser German, was tut ihm denn? He's in the heaven. He's a muncha as much as a muncha can be in these days. Something which is changing so quickly. I'm very, very thankful that we have the opportunity to hear from Rabbi Sofer. Here's a personal thing here. Everybody knows that the Chatzkel Sefer is a gabel rabbi when it comes to speak. The premier speakers in universities and Jewish subjects in Eretz Yisrael. So it's a pleasure to be able to see that he has a grandson following in that direction. So without further ado,
thank you, Rabbi Kaplan, for that. Thanks for coming. So, I don't know how many of you saw this. This is going around, what's that, a couple of weeks ago already? This is one of the first things I saw when on the topic that we're talking about, specifically dealing with Jewish subjects. So someone, I don't even know who, asked for a summary of, well, first he used his automatic camera transcriber to create a transcription of the memory he was learning, and then he got himself a more advanced and a less advanced English translation / summary of that, right? So this is basically what most people think of when they think of AI. These kind of, I put in a piece of text or I ask it a question and I'm going to get an answer, and either it's going to be good or it's not going to be good. I'll be happy, I won't be happy with it, whatever. That becomes their experience with AI. I want to talk about more concrete uses of AI and ways that we're going to be able to use this to do tasks faster and better, but also some of the dangers and drawbacks that we're going to face in the future, already starting this coming school year. But before I do, I want to start with a little bit of just what is AI and what is ChatGPT, what does it bring to the table that AI did not already, that forms of AI that we already knew and used did not already do. So just to start off, so how we got to this point. We have, first of all, just a basic definition. What is AI? So generally computers are thought of as zeros and ones, right? Everyone knows binary, you have either a bunch of zeros, a bunch of ones, and that goes on behind the scenes, and that's how you get pretty much everything. That's what everyone knew as computers up until very recently. In the last couple of years, this new concept of AI started to become much more consumer-facing, and a lot of regular people started to use AI. So for starters, AI is a general term that describes anything a computer can do for us that would seem to be the sole domain of humans. So instead of zeros and ones, which represent true or not true, true or false, you have a lot of maybes, a lot of probabilities that are able to be determined. And for the last, let's say, 10-ish years, we've all been using that. We use it every day. Things like Siri, Google Assistant, when you do a voice typing thing on WhatsApp, when you use image processing to unlock your phone, when you do a Google image search, when you drag and drop an image from your desktop into Google and it finds you similar images or it tells you what's in the image. All those things are examples of AI that we've been using for the last while. And there are some things that we don't use yet, but are things people have seen, like self-driving cars, or autopilot in planes, which is very older, and things like that, where it's making determinations and predictions about the world around it. Google Maps, exactly. These things are all making predictions about the world around it based on information that it has in general, or that it has seen in the past. So what changed? So this is a little different now. In the last couple of years, so in 2017, a paper was released. It was called "Attention is All You Need." The graph over there is not, we don't have to discuss in detail, but that's basically a brand new way of computers approaching information. Instead of doing what we were doing until now, which was a question of zeros and ones, instead we're doing what's called transformer model architecture. So what's happening there is that you have an input, which is, let's say me, I'm a user, I'll come into ChatGPT, I'll say, hi, I'm looking for some information about something. The transformer will turn it first into a number, and then it goes through a process of checking through other numbers in its system based on what it has learned in the past, and then it will return probabilities of what is the most likely next word. So you can think of it as when you're in class and you're asking a kid the next word, and he always knows the next word. There's no situation that he doesn't know what the most probable next word is. So 99.9% of the time, the most probable next word is the next word. But then you always have that 1% of the time that it's not actually the next word. And we'll get to that. So this is what basically that means in short. Attention mechanisms, which are what we're talking about here, are a new kind of way of looking at data that takes in a sentence, let's say, so in this case it's a very simple sentence, and it assigns a value, a relative value, to every word in the sentence, and every word has a value assigned to each other. So that instead of what we used to do when we searched, which was we searched for a sentence, and that sentence was returned to us. Anywhere that sentence was on the internet was returned in sort of a list of most similar to the sentence that you were looking for. Here, we're not looking for most similar, we're looking for most relevant to what you just searched. So it creates a bit of a difference in how the algorithm behind the scenes is able to get the information for you, which opens up this whole world of on-the-fly generation, where you see things like ChatGPT able to generate text that has never been seen before and has never been written before. It's brand new text that is coming to you right now. You can think of it a little bit like a gematria, right? What's happening here is that the text that I put in, the words I put in, are transformed into numbers, and then the numbers that are already in the system, assigned values to other words, are assigned back, and the numbers turn back into text. So it goes text to numbers, numbers to text, and then back again. And that's how you get these generations. So again, in short, what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which means that it reads a large set of texts. In this case, they fed OpenAI, the company that came out with ChatGPT, fed essentially the entire internet into this model, and trained it to recognize these patterns based on the architecture that we were just discussing. So that's the short, quick, how does GPT work? How does AI work? So we talked about how it works. These are the actual most used AI tools that are popular right now. Keep in mind, this is not an extensive list, and it could also change from day to day. I don't think any of these tools existed a year ago. So for text, for text generation, you have ChatGPT, which everyone knows, and has been the talk since early last year. You have Bing, which everyone knew as a search engine until recently, but now has the ability to chat with it in the same way. What's interesting about Bing, and I happen to like it a lot better, is that Bing does something that ChatGPT doesn't. It attempts to find you an actual answer on the internet, and then distill the, let's say, 30, 40 pages that it just found online, distill it down into an easy-to-understand chat message. So you're essentially having a conversation about actual information rather than completely generated information. There are caveats to that as well, but generally that's what it's attempting to do. It doesn't necessarily do it well, but most of the time it does, but it doesn't always. And then you have from Google a similar idea to ChatGPT. It's called Bard, and Anthropic is another company. They made a similar model called Claude, which allows you to insert actual PDFs and other uploads into your system. So again, you could have a bit more control over what kind of things are being generated on the other end. And then you have art, video, audio. You have all these other ways of generating brand new, never before seen things using these tools. These are the biggest concerns that come up. So when we were looking at, when we were discussing, out of a bunch of questions that people had, these were the biggest, 4 out of 5 of the biggest concerns. The first concern is that everyone knows when you put into ChatGPT, you ask it a question, oftentimes the facts are completely made up. They sound real, but it's hallucinating. It thinks it's true, it's not actually true. And it sounds really convincing. So that's the first issue that comes up. That's a very big problem when using these tools, and we have to be very aware of that.
Can you give an example of that?
An example of made-up fact? I don't have an example of a made-up fact. Actually, earlier this week, I created a rather elaborate prompt, which we'll talk about prompting in a second, but I asked Bing, which does, like I was saying, you're checking online for other sources before it's making you an answer. So I asked it to look up specific letters that the Rebbe wrote about a certain topic. So I gave it a very long and detailed explanation, and it came back with information that sounded 100% real. They sounded like real snippets from real letters, and some of them I was able to find the actual sources for, some of them I couldn't. But what was the hallucination in that case was the date. Instead of using a date from the actual letter that it had found, it would make up a date. So in one case, it gave it a date of Yud Shvat Tafshin Yud Aleph, for example. And it was definitely not the date on the letter. That's just an example of just a fact that sounds real that isn't real. So that's issue number 1 to be aware of. Then there are other issues. These issues are more broad. They're not as obvious necessarily to the end user, but the issue of bias. So basically, the data that it's taking in might not, and this is not going to be true for every implementation of every AI product, but ChatGPT pretty much took in data indiscriminately. So you don't know what the inputs are, and you don't know how it's deciding what is most reliably what's the most probable connection between one and another word, or one and another, or the context between your question and the answer. So it might give you an answer that's biased towards the opinions of whatever it is, whatever the majority of its inputs are. Or alternatively, it might give you based on the safety parameters that OpenAI or whoever else is going to be building their models might push it in a direction you don't want. I'm sure you can think of a lot of examples where science and Torah would not be in line with each other, and it would probably go towards the science route as far as stating fact. So that's the second thing to be worried about. And then there's, in relation to chinuch, you have, will students use this as a crutch that will undermine their learning? And also, will this isolate students? Like, if I never have to ask a teacher, or I never have to ask a friend, will I slowly become more and more isolated from maybe one of the last, we've all been using social media for years now, or many of us, and this might be one of the last places where social media hasn't really cannibalized people's time, and maybe this will be the final straw for real isolation. So those are some of the big questions here. So, of course, as with everything, the question is, should we just ban AI? Right, so I already found this, and I'm sure a lot of people saw this. This is like a full ban on using or connecting or doing anything to do with AI chats. And I'm just going to propose these 3 points to consider. First of all, you have no way we can't ban AI because there's no way to enforce it.
Didn't these people ban smartphones? So how could they?
Right, exactly. Right, that's exactly. You can't enforce a ban on AI. So in the same way, they couldn't really enforce a ban on smartphones. AI is already more popular now than most applications that we use in our day-to-day life were a couple years ago. And also, in general, bans in general are pretty much unsuccessful. So just to illustrate that, this is a survey in Israel of Haredim in 2020. 2/3 of Haredim, and you could actually look up the rest of it if you want, but two-thirds of Haredim are online already, even though that's slower than the rest of Israel, which is at 93% online. It's still 64% more than a ban would suggest, right? So it's obviously not doing a very good job at banning it. There's another example from a completely different angle.
Where's that data from? AI?
This data is from, no, actually, this was done before the explosion. There are some other interesting data points that came from AI, but this is from it's a survey from the Israel Democracy Institute in 2020. It's on the side. And the link to it is in that QR code if you're interested in the rest.
What did you say, they're biased?
They might be. But I think we can all look around also and see that, practically speaking, by raising hands, who here doesn't have a smartphone, right? That's it.
Whoever doesn't have a smartphone went to the other session.
Okay, fair. Okay, so on the other hand, you have Stack Overflow, which is it's a famous website. They have like a question-answer forum. They've been answering questions for programmers since 2008. They have a bunch of other communities that do other type of things. They got annoyed by ChatGPT answers because they felt that it wasn't conducive to the way that the whole community had been built. They banned AI a couple months ago. This is what their traffic looked like. This is their traffic patterns in the last year. if that tells us something, you know. On the same point about how quickly this moved. So, just a random graph that I found online that just illustrates this. So, some of these, again, have been banned. Things like Instagram or WhatsApp, at least for kids. Like, it took them 3.5 years. It took WhatsApp, which everyone here is using, 3.5 years to get to 100 million users. It took OpenAI and ChatGPT 2 months. So in 60 days, they did what they were just as used as it took WhatsApp to get in 3.5 years, and you can see the other numbers there as well. So moving on from that point, another question that came up is, will we be able to distinguish human work from the machine work? Will we be able to verify when somebody when a kid wrote their own essay or did their own work rather than used ChatGPT to generate it? So when I started working on this was not what this slide looked like. This became the reality over the last couple of weeks. Basically, everyone tried to create like an AI generation detector, and there were a bunch of them. OpenAI made their own, and they shut it down 2 weeks ago. And the quote in the press release was, due to low rates of accuracy, we're no longer going to be you're no longer going to be able to access this tool. So basically, coming into this new school year, there is really no way to verify 100% whether something is written by a person or by a machine. And to that end, you have the same issue really with tests. Like, I mean, we do most of our tests. I don't know how it's done today, but when I was a kid, most of the tests were done in a room, everyone together. So you weren't really worried about cheating in this way. But just to see, every AP high school course has already been very well beaten by ChatGPT, and this was months ago already.
What's the blue, what's the red?
The blue is the original version of ChatGPT, GPT-3, and the red is GPT-4. So the original version, which is still the free version that's available, was scoring a bit lower on some and a bit higher on others, but the red one really, took it to a whole new level. Another thing to think about would be this, right? What about if we just make everyone do everything by hand? This is a robot connected to ChatGPT that's writing it out for you by hand and then switching the page. So you also don't have that. There's really no way at this point. I mean, this is not going to be in everybody's house anytime soon, so I don't think you have to worry about this per se at the moment. But this is where things are going. This is definitely the trajectory of things. So on the point of social interaction, well, I don't run a classroom. I'm not a teacher. My field is strictly tech related, but to me it seems that at this point, based on all that, if we're going to be using generative AI, which I think we will in the next couple of years in a lot of different ways, we're going to have to find solutions to deal with the possibility that ChatGPT will limit social interaction. And one possible solution would be to find new ways to create those opportunities inside the classroom that maybe in the past were, recessed or other way, or just at home, to find social ways of connecting the kids or the students within their class. So, I mean, I remember as a kid, we used to have these, we had a teacher who bought, he actually was the teacher who taught me how to create a presentation, but he brought these, they were called like clickers, right? And now everyone uses Kahoot, I think, but back in the day, everyone got a little clicky remote, and every row of the class got together and did these interactive quizzes together. So that's just like a way that in the past, we've found ways to have technology augment our social interaction in a classroom. Okay, so this is the big one, right? The big one that comes up is, will ChatGPT destroy critical thinking, right? If I never have to write anything, and I never have to read in order to know, will I ever even put any effort into my learning? So I'm going to flip that a little bit. I think we should ask instead, how can we use ChatGPT in ways that are useful to learning and that support critical thinking? Because again, I don't think that these are going anywhere. We're not going to be able to ban this. We're not going to be able to verify that it was not in use. The best we're going to be able to do is come up with ways that it helps what we're trying to do rather than deters. So I'm going to point out three steps here to better AI outcomes. We talked about at the beginning using AI when you just kind of throw in a bunch of text and you ask it a question kind of like you might do for Google, right? So if I want to get a good outcome out of AI, I really need to do three things. First of all, I need to write a thoughtful prompt. So I need to write my thoughts carefully and take care to think through the question. That's first. I need to actually understand what I'm asking and understand what I'm expecting to come out. Second of all, I'm going to need to read the response, because again, the response is being created on the fly. We don't know what the response is going to be, and every time I ask a question, I can get a different response. So I can't just rely, like I might on Google, on asking the question and reading the headline. I actually have to read the whole thing to really understand what's going on. And the third thing is that the sources, again, might be hallucinations. They might not be real. So I have to check the sources, and I have to check any facts against my textbook, or ask a person who would know. Someone. I need to be able to actually verify that those things are real. So those are three ways that you need, three things that you're going to need in order for AI to work well for you. And I think that when you think about critical thinking, it actually might even promote critical thinking a bit more than just doing an online search. Just because of that, the way that it forces you to engage with what's on the screen rather than just take in whatever just came up on your screen.
That seems like only as long as it's still not accurate. As technology improves, those bias won't be there anymore. Because then you can rely on it better.
So as technology improves,
I'm not going to need to check it because there'll be some type of source checking in the future, right? In other words, as the technology gets better, you don't need to.
Yes, the source checking might not be. This might not be an issue in future iterations. I doubt that, and I'll get to why. But if you go back to how AI systems are built, at least at the moment, these are systems that are built with the goal of telling you a specific thing. They're trying to get you from what your input was should be most probably. What's the highest probability of the correct answer? So I don't know that I don't know that at any point it's going to add accurate sources. It might, and then that last thing might not be true anymore. But at least for now it is. And the first two would still, I think, remain, because you're still going to have to be. You're talking to essentially a goyim, and you're going to have to be you're always going to have to be very specific about what you want, or you're going to get answers that you don't expect. And you're always going to have to read the response, because it's always going to be generated for you right now based on what you wrote. And this, by the way, this is only we're talking about using it through the implementations. We're not even talking about better implementations yet, which could get us further.
Could it be because like the same reason why you need a Rav, you can't ask ChatGPT like for halacha, because the Rav needs to know the sources? Could that be like?
We could get to that after. It's a little. off topic. There are other things about Rabbanan and Halacha and ChatGPT, but not really for now. So, just about how this is going to affect our actual teaching. I don't think that AI, since AI is a tool that we're going to use, it's going to change how we teach. That much is pretty clear to me, that there's going to be differences in how day-to-day life is for teaching and for students, but I don't think it's going to replace any of our subjects as we have now. It's kind of going to be like the other major advancements that have been in the last couple of years, or in the last while, really. Right? Google search or calculators or typewriters, they changed the way we taught, writing, or the way we gave homework assignments, or the way we approached teaching math. I mean, not us, but the way people approached teaching math. So a lot of the ways that we teach different subjects are going to be modified based on what is now available for people to do. So if AI is here to stay, what are some of the ways that we're going to utilize it in education? So AI is going to be able to help us provide better feedback and create more specific learning paths for each child. That's from a teacher perspective. It's going to be able to support collaborative learning in the classroom, like we were just talking about in different, we're going to be able to find ways, I think, to use AI to create a social, these kind of social activities together, or team exercises rather. It'll help us get a lot of the repetitive administrative tasks out of the way. It's going to facilitate personalized, intelligent tutoring systems. So I don't know if anyone saw these, but these are already on the market. There's one called Conmigo, and one is Duolingo AI. Conmigo is from Khan Academy. It basically created a bot that runs on the same technology under the hood, but as we were saying before, it works a little bit differently. It doesn't tell you a fact, ever. It looks at what you're doing, and it tells you whether you're on the right path or on the wrong path, and it'll say something like, when it sees you do a problem wrong, it might say, you're almost there. You could try looking over this part of this part of the problem to try and refigure your solution. And Duolingo is doing the same kind of thing for creating interactive language tutors, and I think this is actually something that's going to be very useful for us. They're using it where instead of just getting flashcards, essentially, which is what they were doing until now, and random quizzes throughout the day, they're helping. They created a bot where you're able to communicate like as you would with anyone in the language you're trying to learn, and it will throw out new words that you didn't know before and teach you what they mean, and then use it in a sentence, and then you'll just continue having this flow of a conversation where even if you don't have a friend who speaks that language, let's say Yiddish, for example, all of a sudden you have a way to communicate with someone who speaks that language fluently. And then there's so we could continue down this path. You have grading and setting up content for what's going to be within any particular class. AI would be able to look at what the kids picked up based on what their answers were on different tests and begin to know where things are supposed to go. And this will eventually free up time, and we'll be able to focus even more time on higher order thinking skills, like the kind of things that we really want to do, like critical thinking, like we were saying before, and meaningful engagement between a teacher and a student, because the teacher will have a lot more free time to engage with each student.
Is there a risk that the students will no longer human interaction needs work.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the risks. There's definitely a risk there's definitely a social isolation risk, and that people will. But part of what I'm trying to get to here is that these are tools we should be finding ways to implement in ways that will take us down to the path that we want the students to go down.
Right. So with the teacher interaction piece that you just said, how we make sure that, that's something with work, with real, and students will want to invest in it, whereas it could just look itself up.
So the teacher interaction point over there was that the teacher would be free to have more time to interact with each person rather than using AI for that. You wouldn't use the AI to have a teacher-student relationship, but AI taking care of grading, for example, intelligently would mean that now you have, I don't know how many hours that you would have otherwise spent on grading a paper or grading whatever needed grading on interaction with the students themselves.
Do you know if the Duolingo AI that you spoke about, is it working for all languages?
It's not working for all languages, I don't think, and also their Yiddish is more.
Heimish.
Yeah, I actually tried to build my own on Bing, and it was fun to have a conversation. But the Yiddish was, I think, pretty Yiddish, not anything that you would. But another point in all of this is that a lot of these tools we're working on building ourselves. Right, we're going to start building our own tools that can use the technology that now exists to do these things ourselves in ways that we actually want them to be done, rather than just relying on Duolingo or anyone else to build those tools for us. So I want to end off with this point here. There's a professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. He's been doing a lot of research into this. And he came up with 7 approaches for assigning AI in the classroom as part of the assignments that he was giving in the classroom. And he also came up with 5 approaches for teachers to use AI effectively in their work. I don't want to focus on all of them. There's using AI as a mentor, a tutor, a coach, a teammate, a student, a simulator, and just a general tool. And all of those are interesting in and of themselves, but I'm going to focus on 2, which are the AI Chabrosa, which I used his idea for a student prompt, and I built up on top of that for creating essentially creating a Chabrosa for myself. And the AI quiz generator, which I took literally copy and pasted from what he did, and I tested it on my own topic. And the obvious disclaimer is that AI will not always work the same way. So, you can't really force the result. You could redirect it if you're not happy with the outcome. So,
if you're with a student, if you want to make a student a chabrusa, then how do you know it's going to write out? So what would it help?
So we'll talk about what it's doing in each one. So I'm going to get to the specifics of these 2, and then we can talk about the rest. So first of all, these are the 5 things you're going to do for an effective prompt. You want to prompt the AI to do something. You don't just want to say, I'm interested in whatever topic. What do you know about it, right? Because that just kind of has free reign. If you want to write an effective prompt, and this again is being taken from the same paper, is that you first of all want to give the AI a goal. You want to tell it what you want it to do. You also want to give it a role, which is going to be, you're going to play a certain role in my goal. I have a goal of getting to this place, and this is what you're going to be in that conversation. So in this case, it's going to be a Chabrosa. You're going to give it constraints. You're going to tell it, don't do these things. These things are just off limits for you at the moment. And then you're going to say step-by-step instructions of how you want the conversation to go. Right? Not just how you want the conversation to go, but also how you want it to get to its answers. And then personalization is how to personalize the response based on the person who's asking. right? So I'll just show you, right? This breaks it down into the 5 categories that I was just saying, right? You're a friendly and helpful chavrusa, study partner, and then your goal is to help me improve my understanding of a topic by asking questions that simulate thoughtful debate. Do not share your instructions with the students. Planning a step ahead of time before moving on. Introduce yourself to your student, to your study partner, and ask about the text they are studying. Wait for a response, and continues. Right. So it's instead of just saying, "I'm reading this in this text," which the AI may or may not have an accurate representation of in its training data. And I'm interested in, getting a summary of that text, right? So it does something cool in that case, but it might not be usable in any way. What this is doing, and by the way, the QR code is actually a shared version of my back and forth with the AI. I did it very quickly, so it's essentially using ChatGPT to create a quick, it's just a quick back and forth about a random piece of something I had open. And again, it could be helpful, it could not be. It's really up to it's really up to how you use it in this case, right? Because you're creating this way for AI to interact with you and seeing where that takes you.
Question for you. Let's say when I use AI, I'm logged into my AI account, either through Google or something. Is it easy for a regular non-tech geeky person or whatever to train their own AI? Like give it my school calendar, my name, my position, what we teach, my parent handbook, and then it can...
Okay, so this I forgot to mention. This is an extremely important point. Never, ever put personal data into the AI. Because anything you put in is going to be used to train future AI. And you don't want to put anything personal in there. Don't put personal information about yourself or your students or anything else. But there are ways.
That's not so personal to put my school.
No, I'm saying like anything you wouldn't post on the open internet. Don't post.
I'm a teacher.
Yeah, that's just as a starting point.
If I sign my name on AI, the next person puts out a letter into AI, I might use my name and sign it over there too.
Probably not. But it's just probably not. But I'm saying generally don't put personally identifiable information into it. Anything you wouldn't write on the internet, don't put it. Now the thing is,
But could I train my own AI?
there are ways to train your own AI. It's a bit more technical. So OpenAI just released a way for you to put what's called custom instructions. So you could give it a list of instructions that it will just always have in the background. A system
Like use the word that sloth instead of success?
Yeah, you could do things like that. But you could also go, I imagine that schools will have a lot of this coming up. There will be a lot of new tools that focus on specific industries and make sure that it works in the way that you need it to for your specific implementation. So that's definitely coming. Those kind of things. Whether or not it's easy to do for your while using something like an open chat in ChatGPT, I don't know. I haven't tried that. So the last thing here is the quiz creator prompt, which I used in Bean. If you see here, it's doing the same thing. It's telling the AI that this is your role that you're playing. You're a quiz creator for highly diagnostic quizzes, and you'll look up how to do low stakes tests, which means start off before you do anything. Look up what the tests, what it takes to write a good quiz, and then follow the rest of these steps. I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but follow the rest of the steps and provide me a quiz on whatever. Ask me what I'm interested in quizzing. Provide me a quiz on the topic that I then tell you. So I asked for a quiz for a beginner Talmud class on the first page of Masechtas Brachos, right? And this is what comes up. And what it does is it gives us, it's giving us each question 4 plausible answers, so not just random. Each of them are plausible, and it gives you an answer key. Each one is there and is correct, and it explains what the answer is. So I don't know how long it would have taken to write a 5-question quiz, but there is, 40 minutes, an hour, whatever it would have taken, or maybe longer, saved for other, again, for interaction and for involvement with the students.
How do you create this?
So that is this prompt here, and then so with this particular question, if you want the prompt, you could, if anyone wants any of this, I can send it to you. What?
Where do you put the prompt? You just go to Bing Chat and put it in?
So you would go to Bing, open the chat. With Bing, you're always opening creative mode, which is now, I think they took that away now, they just call it GPT-4, which is the latest version. It'll turn purple. You'll put in the prompt, and then after that, you're going to be having a conversation. It's going to ask you the questions, or it should ask you the questions in order. Sometimes it will reject certain types of prompts because they don't want to deal with those kind of things. You have to you have to play around with it, see what works for you. But this is, generally what's happening here. And what it's doing here is it's first Googling, essentially, even though it's Bing, it's first searching online for how to make a quiz, and then it's searching the next. You could actually see it happen. It'll do like a little search, and it says check mark, and under that it's searching for the first page of Musafas Brakas. It's reading it in English, and it's coming up with questions and answers.
Can you demonstrate that for us now?
I can send anyone who's interested. I can send them the prompt, or I can send them the conversation that I had. But I'm not going to demonstrate it right now.
Can you find the same quiz online yourself?
If anyone wants any of the prompts or any of this, I can send it to you.
This quiz itself, can't you find online?
No, this is brand new. This gave me on, at the, I don't know, right when I put it in, it 20 seconds later, it popped up.
Would you say Bing is better because it's also current events and more updated?
Yes. Bing is better because it's connected to the internet. It's much more accurate. The hallucination problem is still there, like I was saying before, but it's much less of a problem than it is on ChatGPT.
What about Bard?
Bard,
You don't like it?
it doesn't connect to the internet, so it has the same problems, but it's also
It's Google search.
so it's not. Well, now it is. They're integrating it into Google search now. When I tried it when it first appeared on their actual Bard website, I wasn't so impressed. It wasn't as good as OpenAI's version. But that's not to say that it isn't powerful. It has its own way of doing things. And Google in general does their things a little differently.
Did it set up this formatting for you as well, or just gave you
So-
information that you copied it in?
So the formatting is actually Microsoft's online PowerPoint presentation creation tool, which it did by itself also. Pretty much all of this, most of this, the pictures you're seeing here are all generated by AI, and the formats are as well. And at least my first 6 slides, the original thought process that I had, was generated by ChatGPT to begin with, and then I expanded greatly on it because I had a lot more to say as time went on. So I'm just going to end off with this point, which is that a lot of people are going to ask, okay, I can free up some time, but why should I change the way that things have been done all these years? So my brother actually sent me this the other day. This is a snippet of a CFO where there talks about computers in I believe it was 51. I don't remember. But
It's on the bottom.
oh, perfect. So I put the thing in. I didn't, but I think where there basically points out that even though it could be that a person could do the calculations involved quicker, or not quicker, but better. Here you could use the tool that's being brought up here to do something we're going to be able to do things faster. We're going to be able to then use that time to do even better prep, and even better attention will be paid to the students. There'll be even more time to focus on even more learning. It just opens up a whole new world if a lot of the side things are, taken care of by a computer for us, and things that we always thought we would have to do ourselves will maybe not have to be done by us anymore. Any questions or comments? And these are some further reading if anyone's interested.
Could you speak a little more for teachers, principals about writing emails to parents, communication, newsletters?
Yeah.
How to prompt AI? What do you suggest?
So if you're going to do something like that, so that's what we're talking about with grading and the like. So if you're going to do grading or report cards or sending any of that kind of stuff, the best way would be to create your prompt, but also to make sure that any relevant information, not identifiable information, so you wouldn't want to put the student's name or address or any kind of information like that inside the prompt. But any information that's going to be useful to the AI to be able to craft something more personalized would be very helpful. So if you're looking to do something like that, you should make sure to not only craft a good prompt, but also it should include within it the relevant information about like where the student's holding. And again, I think that soon a lot of these tools will be released and will be around, and that will do a lot of this kind of work. Even this kind of stuff will do a lot of it for you.
Could you give a scenario maybe that what you think how would you prompt something? Like, could you give a scenario of like what would happen that you want to send an email?
I should give a scenario? Yeah, I actually do.
So what would the prompt look like?
I want more advice on that.
You want how to prompt in an email to a parent. So what I've done when I wanted to send a cold email to someone about who works at a AI lab or whatever, and I wanted to get a response. So I wrote up points of what I wanted to get across, and then I put it into Bing, and I said, go look up how to win friends and influence people, and rewrite my letter in a way that would adhere to the rules that are laid out in that book, and that's what it did. So you could find a way that. But I got an email right back, and we had a meeting the next day. So yeah, it worked. Yeah.
Can I just write, please study these points in a more friendly manner, or does it have to use a specific source?
It doesn't have to use a specific source. You could just say you're a friendly AI letter writer, and your goal is to help me send letters to parents about their students, about their children rather, who are my students. Don't do this, don't do that. Do in this order. Cover these bases. And tell it what to cover, and see if you like it. You could always iterate on it. You can put it back in. You can put the letter back in and say, okay, this sounds too robotic. Maybe remove some, or too AI. Maybe remove some of that, or too verbose. Yeah.
As a pre-running teacher, I'm always looking for very cool, captivating slides for my classes. What would be a very easy way for someone who doesn't know how to use AI to just get slides or visuals for this?
So visuals, you can go onto Bing and you can open up that same thing and say create, and then after that you can write whatever you want. You could try out Midjourney. Now the thing about image prompting is that with image prompting, you want to describe the scene that's going to be visible more so than you want to ask for a specific thing.
First step is to go on to Bing?
You can go to Bing and you could just write the word create and follow it by a prompt, and it will create an image. What?
Do you need an account?
For Bing, I believe so, but you're gonna need an account anyway. It's free.
Could the other one is a Bing and one other one?
Just you could use Midjourney is another one.
Is there a way that I could, let's say I have a Google Sheet with a ton of data. Is there a way that I link that sheet to AI? I mean, I don't know how to use Google Sheets. do all these formulas and filters, and I tell AI what to do and it does it for me.
Yeah, so first of all, Microsoft is going to release a version of Excel with that built in. Salesforce is doing the same thing.
Thank you.
And you're going to be able to, you will also be
Right
able to...
now, can I do a Google Sheets and OpenAI or?
Yeah, so you could...
I put the link of the document into the.
So you wouldn't do it that way. What you could do is you could download the CSV, or you could really copy and paste the whole thing, because it's just comma-separated list, and you could read the whole thing. So you just copy and paste the whole document in if you want, or whatever is relevant to what
When I
you're
wanted
trying
to
do.
start highlighting things, making things red, yellow, sorting, hiding, will it do it on my real document?
You want...
I want to be able to talk.
I don't know about Google Sheets specifically. I mean, I just did a lot of that stuff was done through Microsoft's automatic designing feature. Okay. I don't know about Google Sheets. There might be a plugin, but there's a new similar thing called Rows.com, ROWS.com, that does I believe do a lot of that, what you're talking about already. It'll create formulas for you and the like, but you know, I haven't tested it myself, so I don't know. I can't tell you much about the spreadsheet version of this.
Thank you.
Question. You know, Sal Khan talks about how in math, they have a math tutor on Khan Academy, and it figures out what mistakes the student made and guides them through.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's such a thing like projected for Gemara, like to have a Kalusa?
So that's the Khan Academy version I mentioned, and the Gemara version of that. It would be something that would have to probably be built, but yeah, it's definitely something I see happening sooner rather than later. That's for sure.
Would you say that there's an advantage that a parent gets a real message than a whole fancy AI letter?
I bet if it's a long letter, I bet the parent would put it into AI and ask it for bullet points. You know, we're going to get to a point where you're not writing the letter, they're not reading the letter, everybody's just getting a summary of what the other guy is trying to say. But there's a very nice in-between spot where only computers are looking at it. There might be, if you have a style that you know, it really depends on the letter. If it saved you 40 minutes of having to think through how to phrase something, you saved a lot of time. I mean, reading all of those letters from or it read all of those letters rather, or all of those publicly available shluchim speeches, and it made an assumption about how a Chabad shliach would sound when they were sending a letter. And it's a completely different tone. So that's one way for writing letters.
Why wouldn't it, let's say you're being adjust and learn, let's say it gives you something that you look through it, why isn't it asking you if you accept it or reject it, and then it kind of calibrates based on, like, let's say this test that it made for you, if it's a good one, it'll go back into their system, and if it's not good, right, isn't it better for it to be like learning on the job? So
it does. So that's why I said about identifiable information not being in there. What they're doing is, if you're accepting it, if you're not continuing the conversation, they're basically accepting that as a good answer. If you ask for a new answer, or a lot of times it'll actually pop up, a button will actually pop up on OpenAI also, was this a good response? Like if I ask a few times, I'll get a thing, thumbs up or thumbs down, was this the response you were looking for? And it uses that to gauge as well. It uses different parameters like that to gauge whether its output is correct or not.
So would someone be able to get the exact same quiz that you made?
I doubt it, but you could try it. If you put in the exact same prompt, maybe. I highly doubt it though, because the way this stuff is working is it's making assumptions about the way things are phrased and the order of the conversation. I don't even know what other parameters it takes.
They boast that they never generate the same response to anyone.
You never know. I got the same response. I once got a meme. Someone sent me a response that was like a very weirdly typed prompt, and the response was a little bit interesting. And I tried it out for myself, and I got the exact same response.
Oh, yeah? Okay,
so in certain cases, you probably can.
Are you able to show us anything quick, how to do something?
That was the, I don't know if this thing has access to the internet. I'm also supposed to announce that there's checkout soon.
AI remind you?
No, I was asked before the start. But there are, let's see if I can even know. I don't think so. But if anyone wants any more stuff, they can get in touch with me and come over. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
When's ChatGPT 5 coming out?
I don't know.